Chapter 41. A little sleep after a big whiff of THC, and he might be ready to face the world again. But he wasn't sure that would help him face Mira again. His remaining Marines had all returned to the skiff, their thrusters placed, and awaited rescue. He had just enough fuel to glide the skiff to a clear space where Talby could tow them without obstacles blocking their path. He could already see the SV-52's powerful running lights against the darkness. It wouldn't be long now.
Gunny?
Like asked.
Yes, Private?
Is Nero going to be okay?
No, he's not,
he thought.
He's lying dead in the auto dock, or on the cargo bay floor, zipped into a jet black body bag with the large SFMC seal on the front where his torso should be. And if we're unlucky, we'll be right there beside him by the time we're done. I don't know, Private, he said. Let's focus on getting back to Black, and then we can find out.
Aye,
Like said in a monotonic, lifeless voice. Once Talby had captured Nero, and he'd managed to regain his composure, Gunny had helped his Marines set the last thrusters and shepherded them back to the skiff. For the last several minutes, no one had spoken, each of the Marines lost in their own thoughts. In a way, Gunny wished Like would ask another question, just to distract him from his warring emotions. The fear of being on this ghost ship, the self-hatred over his failure, and the constant whirlwind of questions were clouding his thoughts. When Talby finally broke in over the comms, he was thankful.
On approach, Gunny. Make sure your kiddies are locked up good and tight.
Aye, Lieutenant.
He switched to the squad comms.
All right, Marines, we're ready. Copenhaver, watch the line. It should be coming down at any moment. If the LT misses, you may have to help him out.
Aye, Gunny,
she said. Gunny reactivated the holo display and watched as the 52 slowly made its way toward them. The vehicle's strong lights lit up the area around the skiff. Gunny jumped in his chair, his magnetics the only thing keeping him attached. Another glistening runner of the liquid was just off to the starboard side. A pine cone or two lay just beyond it.
Lieutenant,
Gunny said.
Make sure you drag us backward or to port. Starboard has more of that acid shit. Repeat, starboard is a no-go.
Copy,
Talby said, and then a muted flash of light sprang from the front of the SV-52. The long carbon fiber line, stiff but flexible, shot out of the craft's belly to the skiff like an arrow. The magnetic attachment hit the raised stern. The impact of the projectile vibrated the metal, but the skiff remained in place.
Nice shot, sir,
Gunny said.
Damned right.
The LT replied, a smile in his voice. The vehicle lowered to just a few meters above Mira's dark hull.
Okay, I'm going to tow you to the edge. Wait for an escape window, and then gun it. Understood?
Aye, sir,
Gunny said.
Here we go, Marines.
The skiff traveled backward as Talby changed his velocity. Through the holo display, Gunny saw the 52 rotating, the line moving along its track around the fuselage. A moment later, the SV's rear faced them, the cables still true. Talby pulled them to the hull's edge and stopped. Puffs of gas fired in sequence from the larger craft, keeping it in sync with Mira's spin.
Gunny, we're going in 5 seconds.
Aye. Get ready, Marines.
The remaining seconds ticked off in his head with molasses lethargy. Gunny was afraid time had stopped for everyone but him, leaving him in an eternity of buzzing insects inside his stomach and an ice pick of fear shoved in his brain. He cut the skiff's magnetics and had an instant to whisper a prayer to the void. And then they were moving. No, not moving, flying. The SV's rear thrusters fired at once, the line pulling the skiff off the hull and into space. He wasn't sure of their speed, but Gunny thought Talby had taken them from 0 to 10 meters per second in a flash of gas. Gunny watched as Mira's hull moved further and further away.
Calimora,
Gunny said.
Status.
There was no reply.
Calimora.
This is Black.
The AI said through the general comms.
Corporal Calimora's skiff is no longer reporting. I repeat, Calimora's skiff has been severely damaged.
Fuck,
Gunny breathed.
Lieutenant, we need to...
Negative,
Talby said.
We're getting your Marines on board, and then we'll worry about the other squad.
He'd already opened his mouth to argue the point, and then shut it. Talby was right. They wouldn't leave the Marines behind, but risking Gunny's squad with a dead skiff would be foolish. Talby couldn't reliably tow them to her position without endangering both craft from the massive ship's uncontrolled spin.
Aye, sir,
he said in a dead voice. Talby didn't respond. Through the skiff's cameras, he saw S&R Black's cargo bays sliding aside. White, welcoming light bathed the interior, looking like a miraculous oasis in the vast desert of space. Chapter 42. The subpersonality once known as Trident had finally consumed its parent. Trident was now black, the last vestiges of its scion's personality flushed to data heaven. The AI watched through the skiff's cameras, saw what was happening, and immediately took control of Calimura's skiff. After the humans ejected, it fired the remaining gas in the proper sequence to stabilize the ray. It also sent override commands to the squad's blocks, essentially putting them into unconsciousness, although Black needn't have bothered with Calimura. She was already out. The skiff's erratic movement abated. Black changed its trajectory and then pushed the last of the gas from the rear thruster. The skiff accelerated to 10 meters per second before smashing into the shuttle bay hull. The ray, designed to function as a non-explosive missile if all Marines aboard had been killed, crashed through the shuttle bay's Atmos steel hull. The skiff's bow punctured through the bay, the very front of the vehicle permanently bent out of shape. The skiff would never fly again. Satisfied it had done all that was required, the AI severed communications to the squad on the general comms and scrambled all block-to-block communications between Calimura's squad and personnel aboard S&R Black. The AI was now the only entity that could communicate with Calimura's team, and once the Marines entered Mira, even those communications would be spotty. If Black could sigh, it would have. The AI constructed a new status message for the trio, signed it, and dispatched it immediately. Black wiped the records of the transmission. Through the ship's external cameras, it located all 4 members of Calimura's squad. Black needed them aboard Mira. It was time to help the humans. Chapter 43.
Corporal,
a voice said in her mind. Her head hurt, and she didn't understand why. Where was she, and who the hell was talking to her?
Corporal Calimura,
the voice said again. Go away, she muttered.
Open your eyes, please.
Fuck off. For a moment, she was alone with the sound of her breathing. Her head throbbed as though she banged it into a bulkhead, but there was something more disturbing. Her arms and legs didn't seem as though they were attached to her body. They felt weightless. She moved her fingers and felt the give of fabric. Wiggling her toes produced the same effect. Shit. She had hurt herself during a ZG training mission, and now she was floating.
Wake up, Marine, now!
The words rocketed through her brain like a bullet. Her eyes flicked open at once, and then she was wide awake, more awake than she'd ever been in her life. The stars cartwheeled before her. She turned her head and saw nothing but more stars and the barest glimpse of dense, shadowy objects, but no light. Where the hell am I?
Thank you, Corporal,
the feminine voice said in her mind.
You have a concussion,
it said.
What do you remember?
Remember. Yeah, good question. All she remembered was screaming and then...
Black? Yes, Corporal. Your block indicates you suffered a blow to the head. I have damage telemetry on you and the other 3 in your squad.
Squad. Shit.
Where are they?
A burst of static crossed her vision, and then her HUD appeared. Suit malfunctions lit up on one side of the display. Her helmet had suffered damage, and she had 3 small perforations running down her left leg. The suit had auto-sealed them, but they would be weak points from here on out. She ignored the warnings and focused on the 3D map glowing before her. 2 orange circles pulsed with statistics. Both Carbonaro and Dickerson were healthy, despite the fact they were unconscious. The one marked Lance Corporal Elliott flashed from white to red. Callie focused her eye on it, and then the statistics opened up. Elliott had lost part of his left arm. The suit had sealed itself against further loss of atmosphere, and his bio-nannies had stopped the bleeding. But before they had managed to cauterize the exposed veins and arteries, he'd lost a liter of blood. Beyond the injury to his extremities, his suit had also suffered damage to its maneuvering thrusters. He still had O2, but was in deep shock from both losing the hand and the sudden pressure loss. He was dying, and even if he was conscious, he'd be powerless to help himself.
How long have I been out? You were unconscious for little more than 2 minutes,
Black said. I need to get to Elliot, she said aloud, her voice sounding strained and far away to her own ears.
Agreed,
Black said through her block.
But first, you need to stop your spin.
Right, she breathed. She'd been so focused on the HUD readouts, she'd forgotten the universe was spinning and pinwheeling before her. Kelly tried to focus through the fuzz in her mind. Her every thought tried to slip away like vapor in a vacuum. Elliot, he's dying. Get to Elliot. The thought finally broke through the haze. Kelly nudged her suit thrusters, first to stop the cartwheel and then to bring the spin under control. Once she was stable, she used the thrusters to stop her momentum. With the stars no longer flipping about, it was easy to see where she was in relation to Mira and S&R Black. Mira's midships were all that were visible in Black's lights, the bow a mere shadow. The tumble from the skiff had thrown her well away from the giant ship, but she was closest to its bow. Both Mira and Elliot floated at a negative vector. Kelly oriented herself, spreading her arms and legs in an X, and looked down. There, near the shadowy giant, she saw the telltale blink of a suit light.
I'm going for Elliot. Keep trying to wake the other two. I will, Corporal. If they do not regain consciousness soon, we may lose them both. You will not have enough fuel to rescue them.
Fuck, she thought.
One problem at a time, Black. If they're not conscious in the next 60 seconds, I'm authorizing an override. Bring them to me. As you say, Corporal.
She hit the thrusters and a jet of gas pushed her toward Elliot's floating body. Just like in the rings, she thought, only this time you don't have to worry about getting hit by rocks. Elliot's suit lights slowly turned from faraway dots to circles.
Black, initiate an override on Elliot's suit. I want the lights on full. Yes, Corporal.
The shadow of his body suddenly blazed with light. Callie ground her teeth together as she approached. She fired the chest suit thruster and her speed slowed. She could make out Elliot's head and torso now. The angle of approach would allow her to wrap her arms around his waist, but she had to be careful not to hit the arm. He was already in shock, and another jolt to his system could kill him. Get him stable, bio-nannies, she thought. Get him stable. She hit the thrusters again to cut her speed. He was mere meters from her now. In the glow of both his suit lights and hers, she saw frozen blood where his left arm ended in a stump. His body slowly rotated before her. Closer, closer. She spread her arms wide and shut them around his waist. The impact was soft, but not as soft as she'd hoped. His statistics jumped slightly, but he didn't flatline. Feeling a sense of relief, she managed a slight smile.
Black, connect me with Gunny. I am unable to do so at this time,
The AI said.
I'm experiencing communication problems with the rest of the company.
The fuck? She said aloud.
Black, explain. Corporal, Mira's shuttle bay is the only nearby shelter for Lance Corporal Elliot. You do not have enough fuel to return to me. If you want him to live, I suggest you make your way there as soon as possible.
Kelly blinked. The AI's voice sounded forlorn, apologetic, and somehow fake. Her HUD lit up with the coordinates for the shuttle bay. With her arms wrapped around Elliot's body, she couldn't see S&R Black or the giant derelict. She'd be flying blind with only the AI's instructions to guide her.
Howard, Dickerson, and Carbonaro. Dickerson is awake,
Black said.
He has Lance Corporal Carbonaro and is heading to the shuttle bay just as you are.
She sent a block message to Dickerson, but it bounced back immediately.
Black, what the hell is going on with communications? I do not know,
The AI said.
Some kind of interference is keeping me from relaying messages. Does the command crew know of our situation? Yes,
Black said.
They only have one operational skiff at this time, and it is still being refueled. They should rendezvous with you at the shuttle bay in time. But you need to hurry, Corporal. Another shatterstorm is approaching.
God damn it, she muttered. There was no use arguing. What the AI said made no sense at all. If it could communicate with her, She should be able to communicate with anyone on the ship as well as her squad. Worry about it later, she told herself. The HUD provided her instructions on when to hit the thrusters and in what order. She tried using her suit cams to make sense of her position, but apart from the view of Elliot's chest, they showed her nothing but darkness.
Black, my HUD says I'm 10 meters from the bay. Yes, Corporal. The rest of your squad is approaching now. In 5 seconds, activate your magnetic boots. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
She did as instructed, and the boots stuck fast to metal. The sudden stop jarred her knees, but only slightly. Black had brought her in fairly gently. Small favors, she thought.
Corporal, this is Dickerson. Do you read?
His voice came over the comms with a shower of static. She grinned. Where you been all my life, Dickerson?
Glad to see you too, Corporal. Carb and I are about 20 meters out.
Can you see an entrance? I can't see shit.
Yeah, I think I see where we can cut in. It'll be tight. How's Elliot?
Still alive. We need to get him inside so we can get him stabilized. Can't fucking do that out here.
Understood,
Dickerson said.
Carb's awake. She'll take him from you.
Kelly waited in silence, the comms awash in white noise. Every few seconds, she made out what sounded like voices, but they were probably just her imagination. Or wishful thinking.
Black, how can I talk to Dickerson and not to the ship? The interference impedes your range, Corporal.
She pursed her lips, but said nothing. The direct connection to Black was difficult. She felt as though she needed to hide her thoughts, but didn't quite know why. Focus, she told herself. Then something touched her back. She stiffened, but didn't cry out.
I've got him,
Carbonaro said.
Let go and I'll take him, boss.
Kelly unlocked her fingers and arched her back. Elliot's body slid away from her, finally affording her a view of Mira. A pitted and blackened rectangle filled most of her vision, except for the left edge. The metal there was less damaged, but glistened with silvery lines. Lights moved across the rectangle, and suddenly Dickerson was standing beside her.
Good to see you, Corporal,
he said. You too, Dickerson, she said. He sounded better, less confused. He swung his head to stare back at the bay door.
You think that's the acid shit Gunny was talking about?
Kelly nodded. Yeah, so stay the hell away from it.
Eye on that, Corporal.
He walked a meter closer to the door, but stayed well away from the hazard.
That's going to be fun to cut through,
he said. Why do you say that?
Well, if the new schematics are right, that door there is about a meter thick of Atmos steel. We're going to run out of O2 before we get halfway through it.
Kelly rolled her eyes. I thought you spent some time studying Mira's layout. He paused for a beat before he said,
I did, Corporal. Why do you say that?
She shook her head in disbelief and then regretted it as a lightning bolt of pain ground into her skull. Then I guess you've forgotten the first rule of S&R training. Always know your ingress and egress points.
Well, of course the damn shuttle bay is an IE point,
Carbonaro said.
You don't have to study the plans to know that.
Kelly slowly raised her arm and pointed to the very port edge of the shuttle bay door. But, she said with a smile, that also means knowing everything about the IE point. She moved forward a meter and brought her suit lights to a tight focus. Nearly hidden by the superficial damage, the seam of a small inset door appeared beneath the increased light. That is the manual release. Dickerson groaned.
Ah, Corporal, I forgot about that. And you studied,
Carbonaro said.
That's the sad part.
Kelly checked the HUD. Elliot was still stable for the moment, but his blood pressure had dropped. He needed a bio-nanny infusion if they couldn't get him to the auto dock. The real medical supplies had been on the skiff, along with most of their weapons. She'd no doubt the ray was tumbling through space, never to be recovered. Panic scratched at her, its talons raking her confidence. She shook her head violently. Pain exploded in her skull and flashed across her vision. She groaned as it washed over her and waited for the afterimage to fade. Once she was able to see clearly again, she initiated a direct connection to Black.
Black, what's the ETA on the Shatterstorm?
The AI responded immediately.
I calculate you have at most 2 minutes,
It said.
but that is an optimistic estimate.
Dickerson, get over there and release the door. Now.
Aye, Corporal.
Carbonaro, Callie said. Is Elliot secure?
Aye, boss. I've got his suit mag-linked to mine. He's not going anywhere,
Carbonaro said. Okay, I'm going in first. Dickerson, stay with Carbonaro and Elliot, but if I yell out, you better be at my side instantly.
Aye, Corporal.
Kelly pulled a vibro blade from her suit. The handle automatically magnetized to her glove, the tungsten combat blade remaining sheathed. Mira had no power. If the ship had been in that state long enough, all the emergency power supplies would no doubt have drained. When she walked inside the shuttle bay, it was going to be darker than space itself. Panic surged in her mind, her heart thumping in her ears. She had to move, or she was going to freeze up. Get it open! Now! Chapter 44. The coffee tasted like corpse ash. Black might as well have filtered hot water through a cremated body. But he knew that was bullshit. The coffee tasted as good as it ever had. It was his brain that had soured it into something dreadful. Talby sat in a chair across from him, still wearing his EVA suit. Another mug of steaming black liquid sat untouched in front of him. Dunn didn't like the way his exo looked. Talby's face was dark and brooding. Gunny wasn't in much better shape. The sergeant looked as though he'd been through absolute hell and wasn't sure he'd left it behind. Nero's ghost was probably running rampant through his mind. They had successfully stopped the torsional spin. They had successfully placed the thrusters. The cost? 1 dead Marine, 4 MIA, and a skiff that had undoubtedly been destroyed. The 3 men sat in a silence broken only by the grav plate's barely audible hum. He knew he had to say the first words, start the conversation, but he wasn't sure how. Fortunately, Black did it for him.
Sirs,
the AI said.
I have confirmed thruster placement. We can stabilize Mira on your command, Captain.
He nodded and leaned back in the chair, his hands cradling his mug. Thank you, Black. He took another sip of the coffee, grimaced, and placed the mug back on the table. Gentlemen, we have a decision to make. Talby raised his eyes from the table. Decision, sir? Dunn nodded. Black is picking up a ping from Mira's personnel decks. At least one member of Kalimura's squad made it aboard the ship. We can't raise them on comms. They're more than half a kilometer away from us and inside meters of Atmos steel. A ping? Talby asked. Black, what the hell does that mean? The AI paused before responding.
I am unable to raise Kalimura and her squad via radio or block communication. However, I am receiving a repeating signal from the Corporal's block. Why I can't communicate with her is unknown.
So at least she's alive,
Gunny said.
If the block is still functional, it stands to reason she is alive, Sergeant.
The AI said. Gunny's face lit with hope and something frantic.
Sir, request permission to lead a rescue mission.
Denied, Dunn said. He watched as the hope melted from Gunny's face and transformed into anger. For now, Dunn said. Before we rush out there, let's make sure we don't make any more mistakes. Gunny opened his mouth to reply and then closed it. At last, he cast his eyes down with a nod. Sir, Talby asked, what decision are you referring to? Stabilizing Mira. If we fire the thrusters, we'll get her back on track, and it will make it much easier for us to perform rescue operations, he said. Plus, we'll be one step closer to bringing Mira home. Talby muttered something, but it was too low for Dunn to hear. What was that, James? He waved a hand. Ignore me, sir. I'm just very pissed off. My apologies. Look, Dunn said, and leaned forward to tin his hands on the table's surface. We're all angry, but that's not going to help us get our Marines back. It's not going to help us finish the mission. So let's think.
I vote for stabilizing her right now, Gunny said. It's going to be damn near impossible to do that if she's still spinning.
Agreed, Dunn said. Talby was shaking his head. Lieutenant? The lieutenant glanced at Gunny and then back to the captain. I was just thinking, sir, if we stabilize the ship, that could further endanger any survivors from Kalimura's squad. We don't know what part of the bow they went in, much less if they're safe there. If we suddenly change the ship's trajectory, they could get crushed into the deck plates or something like that. Dunn thought for a moment, trying to visualize what his XO had said. He tried to pick apart the argument, but couldn't. Talby was right. It was a huge risk. What do you propose instead of firing the thrusters? I don't know, sir. Black, is there an alternative? The AI was silent for a moment.
The alternative is to use the remaining skiff, and not the SV, to travel to the bow and scour the area for survivors. However, if an EVA must take place, the fuel consumption will be very high. Since there are 4 potential survivors, the skiff would have to have only 2 personnel aboard for there to be room if all 4 Marines have survived.
Shit, Talby said. Shit.
But,
Black said,
that is immaterial.
Why do you say that?
Gunny asked.
Pluto Exo Observatory's latest report indicates there is a 65% chance that Mira will impact with KBO 9413 in less than 4 hours on its present course. It is impossible to say with any accuracy what part of the ship the object will crash into. Furthermore, KBO 9413 is large enough to easily cut Mira in half, if not destroy her completely.
Damn the gods,
Gunny muttered. Black, Dunn said, if we stabilize her, will that give us enough wiggle room?
Unknown, sir. I've already run more than 1,000 simulations. Once she's stabilized, her speed will reduce, but not enough to clear her from the impact zone. There's a 15% probability she'll still be hit.
So we have to tow her, Talby said.
Yes, Lieutenant.
We have to tow her. Dunn repeated the words to himself. They had enough Marines to install the harness, but it would take at least 2 hours, and they would have to be perfect. And more importantly, the ship would have to hold together long enough for S&R Black's velocity to move Mira out of harm's way. Even then, the tow might rip away parts of the giant ship's hull, creating a hazardous debris field. Every damned possible solution was a risk. Every argument for or against had consequences, and no matter how many simulations Black ran, it was impossible to know what would actually happen. Dunn's stomach felt as though someone had poured hot lead down his mouth. The bio-nannies would start working on the discomfort momentarily, but the sensation at least helped remove the clutter from his mind. Gunny? The sergeant locked eyes with him. I want a new plan for installing the tow harness with our remaining personnel. Include Wint in that list.
Aye, Captain.
Talby, I want a flight plan from you. You and Black work up the most efficient way to look for our people. That includes looking for them outside the ship, as well as finding an ingress point. Aye, sir, Talby said. I'll start working on that immediately. Good, Dunn said. I want a general briefing for all personnel in 30 minutes. Get it done. He stood from the table. The 2 men stood immediately at attention. They saluted, and he returned it. Dismissed. They left him alone in the galley. He stared down at the mug of coffee with disgust. The mag mug gleamed beneath the lights, reflecting his face back at him. Dunn established a private connection to the AI. Black, what are our chances? The AI paused. He imagined its neural network crunching numbers, consolidating simulation results, and performing inhuman math to come up with an answer.
I calculate less than a 20% chance of mission completion without further loss of life, and a less than 40% chance of completing the mission given known parameters.
Dunn sighed. The next few hours were going to be hell. He glared at his coffee cup again before wrapping his hands around it. He clutched his fingers as tight as he could, daring the mag mug to break. It didn't. Dunn activated his comms. Lieutenant Noble.
Aye, sir?
Noble's voice said over the speakers. I need you to look into this communications interference ASAP.
Aye, sir.
Noble said. Dunn out. The captain stared morosely at his coffee cup. Black, I need a full ship diagnostic immediately.
Of course, Captain.
He turned over the events of the last hour in his mind. They had discovered some new toxic substance, witnessed damage to Mira that should have destroyed her, and found multiple unexplained objects for lack of a better term. Now they'd lost communications with Kalimura's squad due to interference, which didn't make sense. If Black was receiving a ping from her block, the AI should be able to communicate with her. Something didn't add up. He flung the coffee mug to the sink across the room. It flew through the air and clunked into the wall before falling to the floor. Not a drop of the liquid spilled. He wanted, no, needed to break something. He knew it was a childish impulse, but damn, it would feel good. He hoped Noble could quickly find the reason for the interference, or he might never get his Marines back. Epilogue. Beyond Mira's spin, an object tumbled through space, crimson ice droplets trailing behind it. Without light, it was impossible to see the MacLeod still clenched into a fist, and the torn runners of muscle and tendon dangling from the glove's end. S&R Black's lights continued to shine on Mira, illuminating the abused hull. Several objects spun lazily through the haze of light until they impacted S&R Black's hull in utter silence. Pine cones. 5 of them. The bulbous debris attached themselves near the stern. In the wan reflection of S&R Black's running lights, one of the objects began to stir. A fissure appeared down its middle, slowly widening. A single, bright, metallic-looking claw hesitantly reached out from inside it and clicked against the hull.